publicizing it? He's going to publicize it this week.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 7:30 PM. And this is the Finance Committee of 7 January 2016. The Finance Committee wishes everyone a happy, healthy, and prosperous New Year. The meeting is being televised by Chelmsford Telemedia and is being recorded for future broadcasts. Tonight, we're going to follow the published agenda posted on the town website. Okay, thank you very much. And first of all, I'd like to have a volunteer, if I could, just to take a few notes as to what the votes are tonight, since Pam is not here, and send an email out to her. So could I have a volunteer?
Do it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, Anita, thank you. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the special town meeting warrant article pertaining to the current settlement between the Patrolmen's Association and the town of Chelmsford. And Paul, I believe, is going to give us a little bit of a summary of what it's all about and how much will come out of the budget for that.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
This is a copy of what I'll go through, and
Thank you.
recall when the award came out, I emailed it out to you in terms of the financials that Darlene and her staff put together. Okay. So good evening, everybody. This is a single article special town meeting. It pertains to the contract resolutions with the patrol union at this point, and perhaps the sergeant's union if that's completed by time of the special town meeting on the 19th.
But this does not include the...
This is just the patrol.
Okay.
This is just the patrol amount. So the amount that we're seeking under this, per the arbitration award, is $301,965. That would come from the General Stabilization Fund, and it would fund the agreement between the town and the Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 110, which is the patrol officers union. There are, let me just go to this. The decision was awarded, John, that's not moving. You can help with that. The Massachusetts Joint Labor Management Committee for Municipal Police and Fire issued an arbitration award on December 4th, 2015. The calculation from the amount pertains to that award. The arbitration award consisted of essentially three components, and I'll walk through those on the next page of the slides. The wages will be adjusted 2% per year for fiscal years 14, 15, and the current year that we're in right now, which is fiscal year 16. And obviously, that's retroactive through July 1st, 2013.
Clarify the word wages. Do you mean step, the total increase?
The total pay scale.
The total pay scale?
Is basically the pay scale that was in effect at the termination of the last contract, which remained in effect.
That had 8?
It has 6 steps. Six steps. Yeah.
I checked.
So there's basically an academy first-year wage rate, and then it goes right through the 6 years when you hit the maximum.
Does not include the step increases they get?
That's correct. It's, you just take that pay scale, and then you multiply it times 1.02, and then the next year it's another 1.02, and then the third year is another 1.02. So you're correct. If an officer is not at the top step, they would get the 2% alteration of the pay schedule plus the increase in the step for the year of service. Also, the award included increasing the longevity payments by $550 for each of the steps in the longevity schedule, and I'll present that shortly. And that award was retroactive through July 1st, 2014. So they're basically getting it for 2 out of the 3 years of the contract, the last 2 years. And then the current $1,500 EMT stipend shall be increased to 6% of each officer's base salary, provided that 50% of the police officers in the department are EMT certified. So that's the major components of the award. What I'd like to do is just sort of step you back in terms of, how does this process work? What is this? In Massachusetts, under our laws, the legislature adopted the Joint Labor Management Committee for Municipal Police and Fire. This was done in 1987, and in the Executive Office of Labor, this committee is established to basically have responsibility for collective bargaining negotiations involving municipal police officers and firefighters. So this process only avails itself to police and firefighters. It doesn't go to highway workers or teachers or others. It's a special provision for public safety officers in the state. And how the process works is that when either a party or the parties acting jointly in police and fire bargaining negotiations believe that the process of collective bargaining has been exhausted, the party or both parties can petition the committee for exercise of jurisdiction. Basically means is when you've beaten enough times at the table and you can't get anywhere, and again, you can imagine we've been negotiating for almost 3 years, and basically a year ago we started going through this mediation process. So what happens is the state's labor committee representatives, and there are representatives from labor and management on the committee as well as a neutral, they meet with the parties, and basically what they try to do is reach a resolution. And they start first with sitting down with the parties individually, then they try with mediation, and then ultimately arbitration. And obviously, we went through the full exhaustive process of arbitration. The law then states that once the arbitration award is granted, so in this case, we had a 3-person panel, a labor rep is at the table, a management rep is at the table, and then a neutral. It's like a hearing. You know, the parties present their case with exhibits, you have witnesses, testimony, and so forth. There's questions that go back and forth, the panel asks questions, and then basically, at the end of that process, parties can usually submit post-hearing briefs, and then the panel makes an award. In this case, the arbitrator basically requested that the parties agree to waive post-hearing briefs, and issued what I would consider to be a rather expedited decision. And I think perhaps the reason for that was the differences between the parties were solely financial. And if you see the items I just went through, they were all monetary. So you can imagine the issues could be more difficult if you're going into labor contract language and so forth. But in this case, we sat 4 hours with the panel, answered questions with different parties. We have town council there, human resources people, they have their reps and so forth, the union reps from the police patrol leadership and so forth. So again, all the questions were asked and answered as you would expect, and obviously they see where the differences are with the parties. And if you read that award, I thought they did a nice job summarizing it. I mean, one can read that 4 pages and see what was the town's case on each of the issues, what was the union's case. So anyway, the award gets issued, and then what the decision says is that the town then, in a case of a town meeting form of government, we have to bring it to town meeting, the next scheduled town meeting. So theoretically, we could have waited till April, but I think in the interest of the community, it would be good to have this done before we begin the budget process. So that's why we scheduled the meeting. If it were a city council form of government or a town council form of government, you have 30 days to do it. So again, the whole process is to expedite it and get the matter resolved. And I think the other question is, well, what if town meeting were not to vote to authorize the award by funding the appropriation? Well, then the law says that the decision is not binding, and the parties go back to discussions for further bargaining. That happens rarely in a Commonwealth, but it can happen. And then the town is required under the law to present it in a town meeting as if it had reached it at an agreement at the table. So therefore, we're duty-bound to present the contract in a favorable manner. So that's basically how the law works. And if you think about it, the reason for that is because police and fire can't strike. I mean, you go back to the state's history and so forth. This is a way of how do you resolve matters. So anyway, here's the resulting pay scale, and Strad had asked about this earlier. As you can see, there are basically 7 steps. You've got the academy, first year wage, and then it goes through after 6 years in Chelmsford. After you work 6 years, you hit the maximum. So the resulting wage scale is what you see here. If this agreement is ratified, this pay scale will become immediately effective, and obviously the accountant office has to go back and do the retroactive, because you can imagine some people may no longer be still employed with the town, others came in at a different period, so they do all that work. But this would be the pay schedule. And I think probably what's most important, if you go to the next slide, is how does this compare with our neighboring communities? Because that's of a concern to us, whether we're discussing with teachers or any labor community. And as you can see, the resulting maximum base wage on that pay scale of the $28.14 is comparable. You can see Billerica's basically 18 cents more, they're $28.32. Tewksbury is a penny more than that, $28.33. And you can see Drake, it unfortunately lags behind. And if you've recently read their account in the newspaper, they're really struggling. But I don't think it's limited to Drake, the challenges that they have. So you can see the resulting endpoint. And again, this was the town's argument. You saw the union's argument. They had a broader representation of communities. But I think it's important for the community to know that the wage scale falls in line.
Excuse me, Paul.
Yeah, please, ask any questions.
Does the Patrolmen's Association, do they have to vote on this as well?
No, they're
bound?
They're bound to support it. And the selectmen don't vote on it either. So that's why, if you look at the selectmen's agenda, you don't see a vote for them, because they're bound by the law to have it presented to town meeting. So the only ones who get the vote is town meeting, in the case of a town form of government. If we had a council council form of government, then the council would vote on it. But here, our legislative body is town meeting.
No, but the selectmen will make their recommendation.
Yes, but they have to make a positive recommendation. So therefore, there's no sense to having a vote, because in essence, they're...
So in essence, we have to make a positive recommendation as well.
Well, but no, you're an advisory committee to town meeting.
all right, okay.
You are a legislative advisory committee.
Okay,
The Board of Selectmen and I are the executive authority of the town. So,
Okay, all right.
so the question comes to me, do I support this agreement? The answer is yes, I support this agreement. Because that's the
matter
only
what.
answer, that's the only answer I can give you.
The only answer you can give.
But I can answer questions, and we provide factual information, and town council, who is our labor council, will be the attorney at the town meeting. The resulting longevity scale, as you can see, for those officers who work, 10 to 15 years of service to the community, it's increased by $550, as I mentioned earlier. You can see the scale there, and you note at the bottom that this would now equal the longevity scale for firefighters. So that's, and why longevity matters is not only do they receive the amount here, so you complete 10 years of service with the town, you get $2,050 as a longevity compensation, but the longevity also factors into your base rate of pay for overtime purposes. So that's why when you say, well, gee, how do these numbers compound and how do you get to $300,000? Well, you've got 37 officers, you take the first year, you remember the longevity didn't change in the first year, so that's why the first year increase wasn't as much. Then the second year, you've got what you've built in the first year, and you're adding on another layer with the longevity, and then your third year is the third year total. So obviously, when you're funding 3 years, the amounts can add up for 37 officers. With respect to the EMT stipend, it becomes, right now, it becomes relevant when 50% of the department achieves the EMT certification. Right now, it's $1,500. It then becomes 6% of their base pay. Right now, of the 37 officers, they need 4 officers to complete it in order to hit that 50% effort. And as you can imagine, since this award was issued, there was heightened interest in the department to attain that certification. So as we're budgeting for next fiscal year, we anticipate that we'll cross that threshold. So that's how that works. But again, if they fail to maintain that, then there's basically a grace year period of a year. And then, if they fail it, then they'd go back to the 15. But how this differs from the firefighters who get the same 6% stipend is that the firefighters are required to obtain and maintain their EMT certification as a condition of employment. And so that's how that works in Chelmsford. And obviously that EMT thing is the nature of the response, and again, you've seen the arguments. The idea is that usually the police arrive on the scene first, and they can render aid if they're so trained. So at this point in time, that's the essence of the agreement with the patrol union. As I said, we're hopeful and that the superior officers who we're also in arbitration with, we're hopeful that that can be resolved prior to the special town meeting. If it isn't, then I would anticipate, but the time frame would be, it would probably come the spring town meeting, because, right now, we'd be at the end of January. April is not that far away, so we're hopeful it'll get resolved in the next 2 weeks. If not, then we'll bring it to April. So that is the nuts and bolts of the article and the warrant. Again, I've sent you the award, so you can see the arguments that were behind it. Darlene is here. She can answer any questions about the calculations, but they had to painstakingly go through, and you can imagine, we pay bi-weekly, so basically they had to go through, roughly about 60 pay periods for more than 37 officers, because we had some movement in the ranks, with some leaving, coming, and then being promoted to sergeant and so forth. So it was a painstaking effort to go through, because again, it not only affected their base pay, but also you had to go through, and for certain types of overtime, like court time, overtime and so forth, they had to go back and calculate all that amount. And so I've sent you the detailed calculations that just shows you the efforts so that's where we're at. So with that, we can answer any questions that you might have on this.
Any questions from the committee?
Let me ask, this agreement was for, it was two parts. One of the part of the contract you had already negotiated. This was a separate negotiation. This,
well, what happens is the arbitration takes up matters that haven't been agreed to. The only thing that we had agreed to when we started the arbitration was the duration of the contract being 3 years, because that's the maximum allowed by law. And we'd agreed to a $100 increase in their clothing allowance. That was it. So what happens is they lay that aside and say, okay, the parties have stipulated, they've agreed to this, and then you then had the matters that weren't agreed to, and they obviously had an exhaustive list, and we had a minor list, and so that's how the arbitrations go.
do you provide, Paul, do you submit what you would like to see changed in the contract?
Yes, that's part of the arbitration process.
No, I'm talking about in the total contract. In other words, not just the arbitration, but the others are part of the contract.
Yes, that would all be part of it. Yeah, that's all part of the process. So the arbitration isn't just financial, it's everything. So if we wanted to change language such as how we assign shifts.
Have you provided, say, I want to get rid of, let's say, I don't know, longevity. Have you provided, do you provide a list of demands, not demands, but...
Yes. At the beginning of the process, they basically ask you, what are the outstanding issues? Our issues were limited to wages.
So you didn't submit anything that you want to change?
No, other than wages.
Yeah,
that was
I understand.
it. And they had no language changes either. They just had an exhaustive list of financial requests that went from wages to longevity to the EMT to police accreditation bonus to and so forth. So they had a list.
The negotiator is who? Your negotiator for us? For the town?
Well, at the table, I'm at the table.
I understand that.
Yeah, the police chief is present, but he's not, he basically doesn't have we don't provide him with a voice at the table, meaning that we don't put the chief in the middle of the process. Okay. So I'm there at the table. When we go to the arbitration process, town council comes. Jeannie Parzielli, our human resources director, she's there with me as well. And that's pretty much it on the town side. And so when we go through the mediation process, we have Labor Council, the Human Resources Director, myself, and the police chief there. I don't know who else we would want to bring or could bring, depending upon the issue. But in essence, as you can see here, it was all financial. So therefore, the police chief's there, but yet the chief isn't caught in the middle, because these aren't issues about, staffing or manning or procedures and so forth that would affect the department. So the chief is present, and in fact, he often is very helpful with the informal discussions that take place in these process, and can give us background and so forth, having, obviously come through the ranks and also being the head of the department on a day-to-day basis. And also, he's also in touch with his peers and other communities in terms of, what's going on. So, that, I hope that answers your question in terms of how we're there.
Just one final question.
Sure.
I noticed, I got a list of what the people get.
Yep.
And there's, besides the step and the base salary.
Yep.
There's a lot of other funding. For example, I see, you know, I don't.
Sure, just, you don't have to name a
vacation.
name, you can just name a topic, yes. But for example, they have different types of pay, because we break down their pay, for example, you'd have your regular hours, then you'd have holiday hours, because, remember, part of a contract, because police are 24/7, they get paid for holidays, because unlike other employees who have the holidays off, so they get a holiday pay. Then they get vacation time, and then they have how they use the time. They may have a charge of sick time or personal days. And then you'd also have overtime. And then, you know, the Quinn bill, which is the educational incentive, that's broken out separately. So as you can imagine, you can see all the codes and tracking that is done for this contract. So what we try to do when we're at the table is we try to look at, well, what's the total compensation? Because in my mind, you know, what you want to worry about is, at the end of the day, what am I getting? Because in my mind, I don't care what you call it. You can call it holiday pay, you can call it this, you can call it wellness, but at the end of the day, you know, what are you receiving for compensation? Because that's what matters. When they cut that electronic deposit check every 2 weeks, you know, what's your base? And then obviously the amount of overtime varies depending upon time of year. And then obviously they also have outside detail, which is not part of this discussion. That's
Just
private
one
work.
quick question. They get paid 37 and a half hours of their work.
That's correct. That's correct. So it's 1,950 hours a year. That's
Yeah.
how we figure their
So
annual
if they
salary.
want to take vacation, they get an additional vacation pay, or there's a part of the...
No, when they're on vacation, we charge that time to vacation. In other words, we code it as vacation time.
But it comes out of the,
Because we have to track the vacation utilization, because there's vacation accrual.
it's not extra pay, though.
No, they don't get extra pay when they're on vacation. They get their pay, but we code it as vacation because we have to track that, because
Personal days and all that stuff.
all that stuff, because, you know, because we have to track that, because they earn, and then they're allowed to accrue and carry over, and then obviously if they leave employment, they're able to get that paid out. So, you know, so that's why payroll is such an arduous task for the accounting office, as well as the person who does the payroll in the police department, who submits it to the accounting office. It's a very labor-intensive process, but yeah, all their time has to be accounted for. So when you, and if, I've done it, but if you go through all the individuals, you can add it up, and when you take up their regular hours and their vacation and so forth on a given year, it'll add up to 1950, the 37 and a half times 52, and then beyond that would be overtime and so forth. So that's why you can see how Donnelly had to do that detailed work, because some cases, you know, some compensation is part of the base for overtime and others are not. So it's
So there's one person at the police department that's responsible for this?
Yes, they have a payroll
She
clerk.
inputs the...
She inputs the pay, and they do it
And obviously,
bi-weekly.
you use the Munis system is what
Yep.
used.
Exactly.
Must have a myriad of codes for this one as well.
Right, and then also when they get paid, the codes are listed on their pay, so that way they can monitor their pay too, to know what do they have for accrued vacation time and so forth. So, you know, it's a computerized payroll system.
Seems pretty straightforward.
It's pretty straightforward.
I hope more than one person can do the payroll.
Yes, they do, because sometimes the payroll person goes on vacation, or Darlene goes on vacation, and her payroll person goes on vacation. So, yeah, we do have multiple people who do it, but it's, you know, it's not a minor undertaking with 37 patrol officers in this case.
Any more questions? Okay, can I have a motion to...
Well, I have one final question.
Oh, okay.
What
one
is
final-
the
one
average
final-
increase that they get? In other words, the steps and so forth. Do you have an average increase in salaries that you can come up with?
What the average of the officers are getting for their retro?
Not retro, let's say fiscal 15.
It was a 2%. It's 2%. It's been 2% over from,
Yeah, but there's other things in there they get,
it's 2% between steps, and then it's 2% between steps, and then 2%.
But I think what he's asking is, do you have like what the difference was between 13 and 14? Is it 2.5%? Like if you look at total
It's
comp,
really, if an officer just went, if he was at the highest step and went from fiscal 13 to 14, it's just,
Two.
it's 2%. On his base salary, though.
that's what I'm saying, it's just base salary.
right, but if you look at total comp in those years, how much,
You're looking, including with their longevity, you're looking at about 4.5, I think it's about a 4.5%
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what
Because of the
that's what
longevity.
I came up with.
And then a different officer may have different educational
And then with their
attainment.
plan, that's really not
Right.
just right, and it doesn't have their plan in it, so
Right.
it really varies by officer, if they're a 10%er or a 15%er. We vary, but I would say the average is about 4.5%.
And how does
Thank
that
you.
compare with other towns? Like, how did the,
That's about, in terms of these agreements, that's about what we saw in other communities. For example, Tewksbury's most recent agreement was 2.5% per year. Billerica was roughly closer to 2%, although they had some changes in their longevity schedule at certain steps. So if you ask me what was going on in the police market at this time, it was 2 to 2.5% in
Okay.
terms of the scales. Yeah.
So as far as the actual numbers themselves, we looked over the numbers, we looked at what the actual amount's going to be, and you mentioned that's kind of for stabilization. What is that net impact on the stabilization? I don't have the current number in front of me.
It's
It's
8,
about 8.9 right now.
Yeah.
8.9 million,
And we're looking at 300.
300,000.
301,000, yeah.
Okay. And then in fall, we put in 100 and,
Fall, we have added about 681.
well, I know, but a portion of that was not earmarked, but was in anticipation of.
Right. It's about
I believe it was 100
Yeah,
and,
right.
Yeah.
okay. All right.
Okay, thank you, thanks, Paul. All right, if there are no other questions or no other discussions, I would ask for a motion to recommend this particular article, the article for the special town meeting to be held on January 19th. May I have a motion, please?
Are we going to have no discussion?
Well, I just asked for discussion.
If it,
You
well,
want-
you said there's no discussion.
No, I said, are there any more discussions?
Okay.
If you want to discuss it further, we'll discuss it further.
I would just say that, A, it's arbitration, we're a half a year away from the
Doing it again.
next contract,
Doing it again,
and it's
right.
mentioned in the arbitration decision.
That's right.
And looking at how it was laid out and what the requests were and positions were, it was pretty favorable on the side of the town. I
think
mean,
so,
according to wages, they went with 2% over 3%. For the fixed amount, the union was looking for 5% plus, as a percent of the base of the salary. The reward was $550, not to be tied to it. And the only other position was the EMT pay, and that although it will be the 6%, it's tied on a 50%. So I think
right.
it was a very,
And I think it's equitable for both parties. I mean, it's a
Oh, and
it's a
it
win-win
is, and
situation,
yeah.
which is what it should be, obviously. And that's it's too bad it took so long, but nevertheless,
which is mentioned.
yeah, right, it did, but
Yes.
maybe the next one,
It
given
won't be as painful.
Given the fact that we've just done this, it should be a lot easier, I would hope, so.
We hope.
So, having had our discussion, could I now hear a motion to make our recommendation for this particular article for the special town meeting?
Well, I move to make a recommendation for the special town meeting
Okay, you
on Article 1.
have a second?
Well, can we word that a little better? I'm sorry, I don't
That's
mean
fine.
to step on toes, but what is our recommendation?
I recommend.
Because you-
Either we approve it, or we.
Oh, I know, but
Approve
the language of the-
$301,965 from the General Stabilization Fund
Stabilization Fund.
to fund the employee contract agreement. Is that good?
I second that.
Sounds,
Okay.
okay. second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Abstentions? Hearing none. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, moving along. Sally Lucier, I believe, is going to give us the calendar year-end budget review. In addition to her other duties, she has to do that as well.
Good evening, everybody, and Happy New Year to everyone.
You.
Happy New Year.
I sent you out reports. I hope everybody got them, because I didn't make copies, but
Yeah.
I can get you. I
On the
did
computer, yeah.
email out to everybody the reports. I'll start off by talking about where we are for revenues for the December 31st, end of second quarter of fiscal 16. The revenues continue to be strong, as you've seen. Almost every category, local receipts, through the local receipts is higher than prior year. and pretty much right in the benchmark of the 50% where we should be. The only one that we see that's not in there yet is motor vehicle excise. We should be seeing the motor vehicle excise commitment at the end of this month, and then those bills will be going out in February, March timeframe, and then we'll see that revenue be coming in the third quarter. So that's kind of skews the budget versus actual percentage for local receipts. But if you go down the categories, you can see they're all, meals tax, rooms tax, all of those are coming in very strong. One thing that jumped right out at me was the permitting. We're budgeted $600,000. We've already collected $585,000, so we're almost at 100% of that budgeted. Yeah, I did check with the building department. We have several homes going up. There's 5 homes, I think, being put in over on High Street. There's another development of another 5 homes, and another development that I'm not sure of the road. We do have a lot of renovation being done on the commercial buildings off of Billerica Road that are being retrofitted for companies that are going to be moving in, so they're being renovated. So we have a lot of construction going on. I guess the good weather has helped that, so people have been able to continue with the building. So that's good news. And that also feels like, I think, the economy, people are spending some money there. The real estate and property tax is right on schedule there at 50%. It's the same thing with the state reimbursement and other financing sources. Those are things voted at town meeting. One thing that looks a little under is under local receipts is line number 14, which is the interest investment. People always question me about that, but that's what we have to do there is that we're required to mark to market on the bonds. And I don't know if anybody's seen even today, the Dow plummeted 400. So we're just, every month we have to market, we have to book it. And if it's a negative number, we have to book it. So I don't get so concerned about it until we get toward the end of the fiscal year, because it kind of fluctuates every month. So when John sends me it, sometimes I go, oh, my goodness, and then the next month it goes up. So, depending on the market.
Don't take it personally.
I know. I just go, ooh, that's a big negative number. But that's why that kind of fluctuates. So some months it's up, and this month it's down. So that's what we have to do with the market. We're required to do that mark to market. We have to book that. So everything on the revenue side, like I said, I'm very pleased with how I think hopefully we'll continue this trend and we'll end the year strong there. And on the expenditure side, looking over the departments, I haven't had any departmental issues at all. I have spoken to some department heads, just feeling how their department's going. 6 months in, everybody seems to be running fine. I go down the list, there's no department that's actually gone over their benchmark number of the 50%. Everyone's fine. So I don't see any concerns there at this point.
How about the school system?
The school's doing fine. I think I haven't really had a chance to really touch base with Michelle in the last week or so since the new year. I know that she's going to be presenting to the school department on her numbers.
Maybe the tri-board, too.
The tri-board. Looking at my reports, everything looks fine. I don't see any issues.
Where are you with headcount trending versus budget versus actual? Any to plan or above plan?
For the school department?
No, for the entire town. Everything's to plan?
Yeah, everything's to plan. Everything's fine. We haven't,
Do they encumber the salaries, summer salaries now? Have they encumbered?
They encumber all their salaries at the beginning of the fiscal year, yes. They encumber everything.
Which includes the summer salaries, for the summer? That they pay. People may not take it.
Well, yeah, till the fiscal, till June, till the end of their fiscal year, till the end of June, yes, yep. They encumber all of their salaries. And then I did send you out the report for the revolving funds. I just wanted there's no, I don't have any issues with any of those either. You may see, I think the circuit breaker number, there was a negative number there.
Yeah,
I've talked to Michelle about that.
What is that?
They're allowed to be able to spend it. We know that as long as they don't overspend what the budget number is for circuit breaker. A matter of fact, I just got in a receipt for circuit breaker that's not in that number, so I'm not concerned with that negative number. They have revenues coming in.
$72,000.
Yeah.
You say it's-
That's
They can
gonna be
actually,
changed?
they can spend it as long, no, because they have like a grant for that, that money's coming in from
yeah,
the state.
okay.
So they can, actually, they're allowable to go ahead and spend that money as long as we know the money's coming in. So they can deficit spend on that line item.
That's a set grant. You know when that's coming in?
I just got some in.
Oh, you did? Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
perfect.
I just got a circuit, matter of fact, John brought it to me last week, so,
So that'll go back to a plus column.
right,
Okay.
yep,
Perfect.
yep. So, yeah, I think I don't really see any concerns
So,
at
no
all.
problems. Okay, good.
Okay?
That's a good thing.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Paul, just discussing the budget process, you mentioned to me earlier that the state will release their cherry sheet on the 27th of January.
Yeah.
And that-
By statute,
By
the governor
statute.
is required to have the budget released, his proposed budget, by the last Wednesday of January. That's the 27th. So at that day, usually by 1 o'clock, they'll have the cherry sheets issued, which are local aid assessments and receipts, as well as the which includes the Chapter 70, as well as the net school spending requirements. His budget will be released. He'll also have the proposed monies that he's going to be in for circuit breaker and so forth. In fact, it's at the same time that the governor's doing his State of the State address
Right,
as well.
exactly.
So that sort of all comes in together.
And
He does
coincidentally, that's the tri-board meeting,
that night.
so we'll know what the numbers are.
So
They'll be hot off the press.
Yeah, we'll bring them, we'll incorporate them into the
And hopefully they'll
PowerPoint
be,
discussion that night.
hopefully they'll be positive and we won't have any anguish.
Well, but I mean, I don't think there's going to be much surprise. I mean, you probably have seen, the governor's gone on record saying he does not foresee any new tax revenues
Right, right.
in terms of new taxes in the budget. The House Speaker has concurred with that. And so you can, and also you can see, for example, the governor is still talking about making mid-year cuts to the current state budget, because it's not that the revenue estimate is off, it's the non-revenue components of their budget, as well as some expenditure areas that are running off. So when they did their revenue forecast, those numbers are coming in. In fact, the December numbers were just released the other day. They're slightly above their estimates. What's getting them is the other components of the budget, that, and as well as some expenditure requirements. So, but he's already assured us that there'll be no mid-year local aid cuts to the cities and towns. So we won't have to deal with anything this year. The question is going to be what's next year, and next week they will agree upon the consensus revenue number. So that way the governor, the House, and the Senate have the same revenue number for their budgets. That will be announced next week. The governor, when he ran, made a commitment that he would increase local aid in terms of what we call the lottery aid or the unrestricted general government aid in the same amount as the growth in the revenues for the state budget. So I think we kind of can see what's coming in terms of what may come out of the state budget. What's uncertain to us are how will he fund, the other items that are non-revenue, such as the circuit breaker, what will be his address to those items. And for us, what we'll then see is what is the impact to us in terms of school choice assessments, charter school assessments, and so forth. So that's why those numbers are so critical, because we've seen those numbers can vary significantly. Also, part of that is how the Chapter 70 money flows between us and Neshoba. Now, we've been told by Neshoba that their October 1st census counts that the numbers were static, that we did not see enrollment growth from the member communities. So therefore, we don't expect to see a dramatic increase in the
Well, in
Neshoba
Chelmsford,
assessment.
it's the same as last year? I mean,
Yes.
there's
Yes.
no increase?
No.
That's
So the
correct.
percentage is the same?
Right.
That
Right.
will be assessed?
Right, so the
okay.
question is what will their budget request will be, but how does also our Chapter 90, 70 money go? Because we do know that the enrollment in Chelmsford Public Schools did decrease again this year. So they'll be pushed, some money will be pushed over to Neshoba because of the reduced enrollment in Chelmsford. And I don't know what the enrollments are in the charter schools or school choice, so we'll have to see that.
So given that that's going to happen on the 27th,
Yeah.
and the budgets are due to you,
Yeah, budgets are in, we're working on them right
All
now.
of the
My
departments?
plan is basically to release a budget the following week. So basically, we'll
First
get it
week of-
that first week of February. So when if you meet the first basically a week later. So if you were to meet the first Thursday in February, you will have the budget, and I'll send it to you in advance of the meeting. So we'll email it out to everybody, probably no later than that Wednesday, so at least a day ahead of
So
time.
that's probably when we should probably meet next, and we can, you know, at least, everybody will have their particular assignments, and, you know, we know who they're gonna be, and you can set up your dates with the individual departments and get all that done before because the last budget to come in will obviously be the school department and the SHOBA, so that will be, you know, that'll be sometime in March.
So,
All right, so I think that's,
so the first week of February?
we'll probably, our next meeting, our next scheduled meeting, other than, of course, the special town meeting and the tri-board meeting, which is on the 27th, will be the first Thursday in February,
February 4th.
February 4th.
And the
Thank
special
you.
town meeting is on the 19th,
Right, and
Tuesday then.
Tuesday the 19th, right. Okay, any,
Sorry, tri-board is the
27th.
27th?
when's the 27th,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's all cast right.
It's 7 o'clock at the School Administration Building.
So in February, we're looking at the 4th, the 11th, the 18th, the 25th. And then just keep rolling, yeah. Oh, I know, yeah.
Well, it may not be necessary to do one every week, but, you know, we'll
see
try to
what-
bunch them together.
When do we want to start having people, having the presentations come in?
Well, I'm thinking you gotta, I mean, we have to review them first.
True.
Personally. So as soon as that's done, then we can start to put together a schedule as to when they should come in. I think.
Okay, we can discuss
probably-
that on the 4th then.
Yeah, no, as soon as possible after they've reviewed, I think would be the best time to come in. You know, everything is, you know, fresh in your mind, and you can do that particular process.
Should we
Do you
try
have any
to-
comments?
Yeah, I can tell you, you shouldn't be alarmed, because I can tell you, there's going to be not much change in budgets.
Not much change.
Yeah.
Because
It's not going to be like last year.
it's not gonna be like last year. So, you know, we're meeting with department heads and so forth. By the time you take account for the monies that are set aside for, again, all these contracts expire June
Sure, right.
30th. So by the time you set aside money that's set aside for the increase in the funding schedules, you then pay your increase in your benefits in terms of your health insurance, your increase in your retirement assessment, and so forth. There's going to be no new staffing positions in the general government side and so forth, nor are there any new programs or expansion. So these departments will be ready to come in with you on short notice, and also to meet with you in advance.
So it won't be so arduous as it was last year? Okay, well, that's good. We can probably wrap it up in a couple of, few weeks anyways. So we'll come up with a schedule on the 4th.
Yeah,
And that
we can
should-
start contacting people
People-
about when we want to meet with them
Yeah, yeah,
individually,
sure,
and then the
absolutely.
4th, we can talk about, okay, what's available, who wants to come in when,
So we
and
should
then,
start doing that
So-
ahead of time, okay.
Right, so we should give him some advance
Yeah, and
warning.
they're always very accommodating. I mean, usually anybody will say, you know, come on in tomorrow. I mean, there's no big
It's not a
deal.
long process.
No, it's not a big problem. Everybody's very, very accommodating. All right, so any other old business that we want to discuss at this time? We don't have any minutes to approve at this particular point. Pam couldn't be with us tonight, but I'm sure she'll be here the next time. Any public comments? Mr. Diggs?
Glenn Diggs, 220 Wellman Avenue. I just have a question concerning the police agreement. There were two slides presented. One was the resulting police officers' wage scale for the current fiscal year. And the second was, how does the Chelmsford parole officers' maximum hourly base wage compare to neighboring communities? I was just trying to figure out how the after 6 years figure, which is the maximum, which is $28,000, or is that per hour? Is that per hour?
Per hour.
It's per hour.
That's per hour,
Per hour.
okay. And the only question I had is that, if I'm correct, the agreement runs out in July?
This year,
And has
End of June.
End of June, end of the
Right.
fiscal year.
Has there been a new negotiation started?
No.
By law, well, we can't begin subsequent negotiations because this contract hasn't been resolved and ratified.
and it can't be until
It can't
town
be
meeting.
until town meeting votes. What I can tell you is we are planning on meeting with the patrol union and the sergeant union as soon as February to start the discussions for a successor agreement. If we can get it done for April town meeting, we'd like to, we will. If not, then it will carry over to the fall or beyond. But no, we can't begin the discussions until this agreement is ratified and put in and resolved. And that only can take place by the vote of town meeting.
Okay, all right, good.
That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Glenn.
Thanks.
Okay, we've already discussed the new business which we have before us, which are the budgets, and we'll discuss those on the 4th. And of course, we have our special time meeting the 19th and the tri-board on the 27th. We have no press here, so I guess we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much, and good evening. Thank you all for coming.
Well,